You're listening to the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Wyatt. Today, it's all things waterfowl with Darren Hardesty and Houston Havens on the show.
This episode of Mississippi Outdoors Podcast is sponsored by the Foundation for Mississippi Wildlife, Fisheries, Parks, and Marine.
All right, Houston Havens and Darren Hardesty with us here, biologists and waterfowl, right up your alley. And this is the time of year to be talking about it, boys. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So first up, over at Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks Facebook page, I saw a really cool video celebrating 50 years of the duck stamp program. So tip of the cap, but kind of fill me in real quick on celebrating that and kind of where that is 50 years in.
Yeah, it's a really kind of a landmark in the time frame there. The 2025-26 duck stamp, state waterfowl stamped is the 50th in the line, and it's kind of a landmark for conservation, for waterfowl conservation. The state waterfowl stamp in Mississippi is required for everyone 16 years of age and older, so no exemptions once you turn 16. And so it's a really good contribution for funding that we use on things like wildlife management area projects. We fund wildlife research or waterfowl research primarily through Mississippi State University. Conduct aerial waterfowl surveys with that money. And so a lot of things are done for waterfowl and wetlands in Mississippi and outside Mississippi because we're dealing with a migratory bird resource. With that funding. So hunters are a big part of waterfowl conservation in Mississippi for sure with that waterfowl stamp.
Yeah, it was a great looking video. Of course, you were in it with some of your folks, and I saw the aerial footage. Some of that might have been drone, but I also saw the guys in the airplane. Mm-hmm. And I think I asked you go up in an airplane? And you said, well, I do some. And then Darren, you said, you just got out
of the airplane. Yep.
Like a few hours ago.
Yep. Yeah. I got out of the airplane about 1:00 just in time to get in the truck to head down here to do this. Just trying to wrap up what we call our early January waterfowl survey.
Okay, so aerial surveys like that. Correct. Let's start with kind of the purpose behind it. I mean, some of that's obvious, but how would you describe the main purpose that those aerial surveys serve? How would you describe that?
So it's basically geared toward getting a distribution and abundance in the Mississippi Delta. The Delta is the only portion of the state that we cover with our surveys. But so we have the same methodology year after year, so we can go back and compare across time with those estimates. We're certainly not counting every duck hole in the Mississippi Delta, not counting every bird in the Delta, but we have a method that lines out the Delta with random transects, and we fly those. Takes about 3 to 4 good weather days. Darren kind of laughed talking about, being the early January survey. It's just taking a long time to get this one done because of weather, things like that. Not just rain, but wind. There's days where you just can't take, being in an airplane for 8 hours.
Sure.
But yeah, just trying to get a good estimate of the numbers and then the distribution and compare those in long-term trends throughout time.
Now, Darren, Houston said 8 hours. That's what I was going to ask you, like a typical day for one of those. What's the schedule like for an aerial survey?
Yeah, so I fly out of the Cleveland, which is where I'm based out of, and I get in the airplane typically around 7:30, 8 o'clock, and it's a fly till dark day.
Really?
You don't fly all day long, right? The airplane can only go so far on so much fuel. And so usually have to stop every 2 to 2.5 hours to refuel. Gives me a good break to get out of the airplane, stretch my legs, kind of get my legs back up underneath me. But it takes about 3.5 days if we can get good weather. This past survey definitely plagued with bad weather, fog one day, rain another day, wind, can all play a factor into us being able to finish up the survey.
Are you flying with a pilot or are you the pilot?
Right. So I'm definitely not the pilot. I've got enough hours in the airplane. I feel like I could be a pilot. But no, we contract that out. We have somebody else flying the plane and we're looking out the right side window, flying along those transects. We're at about 500 feet above ground level. And we stay on those transects and we count every duck and goose that we see along that transect. We count them by species. So we separate them by mallard, pintail, shoveler, teal, and then so we get a count for the different species, and then we're also taking the habitat type that they're in, whether it be in moist soil or an agricultural crop or a permanent water like an oxbow lake or tailwater recovery pond, something like that that's got water year round. So we're collecting that habitat data to go along with that.
The idea of land, refuel, walk around, go back up, it makes for what I picture as a long work day. How often throughout the course of the year and the work that you're doing? Is this a year-round thing? Is it a seasonal thing? You do it for a month?
Right. So we will conduct the aerial waterfowl survey 4 different times through the year. So we'll do it once in November, the November survey. We do it once in December. And then we typically do it twice in January, our early and our late winter survey. This year, like I said, the weather's kind of had us plagued for this early January survey. And we finally were able to wrap it up today and hope to get those numbers punched in and that report out as soon as we can.
Very cool. When I was mentioning the video to you, Houston, I said something. I said, drone. It looked like I saw some drone footage for the video. Mm-hmm. But is a drone something that is utilized for surveys or no?
Not currently, because a drone has limitations on how far away you can go. This is this is spanning miles and miles of transects all the way across. Starting up around Tunica and finishing down around Natchez actually. Mm-hmm. And along the Mississippi River there. So we have used drone surveys on like property specific counts, like wildlife management areas. We've done some waterfowl counts on those with some drones. And so that technology is continuing to develop. As soon as you buy one, it's kind of outdated. So looking forward to how that will continue to advance and be able to maybe one day, not be getting in an airplane to count birds. But right now, that's the best method that's used for getting a large scale count like that.
Yeah. All right. So currently, as you look at, habitat and numbers, and you look at this season as compared to, last couple of years, kind of give me the synopsis, kind of where things are and kind of what you expect right now in 26.
So you're talking to 2 duck hunters ourselves, and so we may give you 2 different opinions based on what our own experiences have been. That's kind of the way things go. But compared to the last couple of years, from what we've seen on wildlife management areas, private land hunters that we've talked to, things seem to be better as far as hunting success goes. Now, part of that is driven by weather conditions have been a little better, a little more favorable. Cold weather continuing to come from the north throughout the season. We certainly had some warm days this fall and winter to go along with those ups and downs. But it's also been a really dry year, especially across the Mississippi Delta. And so that can play a couple of different roles there. We want to have abundant wetland habitat, of course, to be able to attract these birds as they're moving south. We actually talking about our aerial surveys. As soon as we finished up in November, other southeastern states were kind of doing the same thing early in the season before their hunting seasons got started off. And my counterpart in Louisiana said, "Man, I can tell that the Mississippi and Arkansas Delta is dry because our count is up for early season in November." And so we know that some of that happened. Those birds coming down, just not a lot of habitat out there, and they continue to go on down to the marsh in Louisiana.
So they keep going till they see what they want.
Will, right? Sure will. But all that to say, we have public lands that had pretty good, reliable water to get started early in the season, and hunting. Hunting has been pretty good on some of those areas at times, kind of ups and downs like they always are going to be. But the public pressure on those areas, because of hardly any water anywhere else, have really been hunted heavily, which is a good thing. That's what they're for, right? For hunters to get out and enjoy those on. But we'll see how it finishes up. Looks like we got some weather coming in here pretty soon to finish out the season. So
I was, as you mentioned that, I was thinking that, as we record, full disclosure, we're looking at ahead of this upcoming weekend. I'm not a weather person, but I see those maps where it's that big blue blob. It looks like it's just swinging down lower and lower, and I wonder like what the expectation might be, or what that could do. A system like that, what would you think?
Yeah, I would say that ducks are going to come down kind of ahead of that front, honestly.
In front of it.
Yeah, they're going to. show up, early. That front's going to help push them on further down. And I expect our population to increase over the next couple of days.
Mm-hmm. So weather is a primary factor.
It is a primary driving factor, right? Yeah. The timing of when weather systems happen plays a large role in that, and it varies by species. A common thing that duck hunters talk about these days and over the last few years is mallards and how they, they're just not moving south, as early as they used to, or sometimes not in the numbers that they used to, and that's certainly the case. But a lot of that is weather driven. The timing, if we would have had a weather event like this one that we expect this weekend, earlier in the season, probably would have had more impact for driving birds south. But it's, survival is the name of the game. They know what time of year it is and how much longer they've got until spring comes. And so that kind of plays into the decisions that they're making as they move around.
Yeah, man, if we could just control the weather. If I could just make a phone call. Can't do that, though.
Nope,
it doesn't work that way.
Just got to roll with what it brings.
At this point in the game, the cold weather, I would take rain over the cold weather just because of lack of habitat availability out there. Talking about being in an airplane, that's one thing. You get a bird's eye view of what's there, and the majority of the delta is bone dry. There's duck holes that with private landowners that we work with that they've done everything right as far as managing their property, but maybe they're rainfall dependent as far as getting water in their duck hole, or maybe they had water earlier in the year and it's dried up. Right. I literally flew over several properties today that were pumping. And to be pumping mid-January, that's not good, right? That's not a good sign. So at this point, I would take water just to increase the footprint across the Delta as opposed to cold weather.
Focusing on the Delta, we dry statewide pretty much, as far as we know on that?
But basically, from what we've seen, it seems to be the case statewide. Of course, some areas are, like the North Delta has gotten more, rains favorably than the South Delta, but it's, pretty widespread, limited habitat.
And with the cold front coming, what's coming is going to freeze up a lot of this habitat that is there. There's several areas that are shallow, even some of these tributaries and lakes that typically are considered deep water habitats are actually pretty shallow. And we'll see those are probably going to freeze up as well. And so you're going to see ducks searching for that deeper open water habitat that's going to be really limited due to this cold weather.
That's what I was going to ask. So if that happens, then where do they go? And so it's then concentrated even more potentially in terms of where they go in Mississippi.
Right. Often what we see is they'll bounce to deep lakes, things like I know you're a fisherman, places where you might go to catch a bass are probably going to have some mallards and kind of odd species, for the wintertime, just kind of riding it out in limited open water habitats. You'll see birds that are roosting on shallow water areas, and just the activity and the body warmth of those birds, keeping that water moving and all, they'll be able to keep some of those areas open. And so if you're fortunate enough to have that on a property, those are going to be really important areas for, when the cold is here. Darren was talking about birds moving down probably right before this cold happens. But also we think about, as far as waterfowl hunting, after, if we do thaw before the season ends, we really see a response from birds once that happens. Because they're not able to get to these food-rich environments, they're just kind of sitting on the deep water habitats where there's not a lot of food. They'll bounce as soon as it starts to thaw out in, shallow water areas with a lot of food that they can reach is available. They'll really start to hit those areas after a freeze like this, typically what we see.
Yep.
So we get that freeze, and then what? Let's say, just hypothetically, 3-4 days later, it starts to thaw back out. Then there's a real run on it. Then
they're heading for the food then.
Yeah.
Okay. Both of your eyes lit up just there thinking about that. I saw it. Your eyes started to sparkle just a little because you're duck hunters too.
Right. If you're able to manage your work schedule, those would be the days I'd be looking at.
And talking about habitat availability during those freeze-ups, one thing that a lot of landowners are doing, something that we also do as a state agency on our wildlife management areas, is we'll turn the wells on. We'll cut the water on, get the water moving, keeps it from freezing up to provide those areas during that freeze up.
Okay. So when do you make that decision? I mean, it's just an hour by hour, day by day thing?
Yep. It's just watching the weather and, seeing, sometimes it can be just, sometimes the temperature wins and it's just kind of futile to continue to do something like that because it costs money to run those. But yeah, I mean, he's right. If you can, keep some water open, it's important for birds. It's important for hunters that are using public property as well.
Yeah. It makes sense. I live in Tupelo, and I was thinking, it's more dry than normal because normally by this time of year, my dog has tracked mud throughout. Right. The mud room and the garage of the house, and he's not making as big a mess because even our yard is not as saturated as it normally is. And I'm in a hilly area, so that's just kind of where we are. It's really fascinating though to think about that. Okay, the weather, the main factor, certainly it changes the whole pattern of the whole thing, but it doesn't necessarily make it worse. It just kind of depends on who you are and where you are and when you're there, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's not a better or worse thing, I don't guess, overall.
Right. Darren was talking about, seeing people pumping as he was flying in the plane today, here in mid-January. There's not a lot of years where we see habitat go down, wetland habitat go down throughout the season. It's usually really dry in November, and then December it's bumped up, and then January, early and late January it continues to rise. But this is just one of those years where it's kind of stayed at that December level or even gone down in some areas.
Yeah. I mean, there's farmers. I saw a farmer today south of Greenwood subsoiling his field, and there's people that are landforming their fields, moving dirt in mid-January. It's unheard of. Yeah,
that's unheard of. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the weather, what it does, that's, the predominant factor. And it has the effects, you're talking about food and, freeze, thaw, all that. Are there other factors or any other factors that you're tracking that aren't necessarily directly tied to the weather? Or is that a dumb question?
No, it's a great question. At a smaller scale, at the, property scale, or, we work with our wildlife management area staff quite a bit on, changes in regulations. How can we maximize hunting opportunity in some areas, and how can we make a little more of a quality experience on some areas? So managing pressure is a really big part of waterfowl hunting, experience, I guess you would say. And so a lot of research is going on currently in the waterfowl management community, looking at how birds respond to pressure. A lot of advanced technology being put on these birds with GPS transmitters, so we can get a fixed location on, mallards that Mississippi State is trapping right now and putting transmitters on. Every 30 minutes they can see where that bird is and what kind of habitat it's using. And, was this area hunted, and did it, have, did it cause movements for that bird? And so just trying to learn where that balance is because it's, behooves us to responsibly manage for the natural resource for the birds that are here during the fall and winter, and then also find that happy medium to manage for waterfowl hunters who are paying for that waterfowl stamp, who are investing in wildlife conservation, to try to meet their needs and their goals as well.
Sure. So regarding making decisions on, what those management, measures are going to be, waterfowl and duck, population is a different thing than, say, another species like a deer or whatever, because what's done here is directly affected by and related to what's going on in other states. So it's a little bit of a different sort of process up the ladder, right? Is that the way to say it?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Waterfowl are what we call a continentally shared resource. And so we have to work with other states and provinces even. Mississippi is part of the Mississippi Flyway. And so there's an organization called the Mississippi Flyway Council, where we work with states basically north and south of Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, and up into Canada. Just coordinating on things like what we've been talking about, research projects, monitoring populations, migration changes or issues there. Often when we have an issue in one state, it's shared by multiple states, people all over the country. And so working together on those issues. Another thing about being a continentally shared resource is we can't just worry about habitat for hunting waterfowl here in Mississippi. We have to be invested in breeding habitat, which extends way up into Canada, the prairie pothole region, the boreal forest regions of northern Canada, places where our ducks come from. We don't, aside from wood ducks and Canada geese, most of the ducks that are wintering here in Mississippi are coming from far north of where we are now. And so, we talked about the duck stamp earlier in this segment, and a portion of the duck stamp funds in Mississippi are actually used on conserving breeding habitat, in southern Canada in the prairie pothole region, because we have the science that tells us that's where our ducks are coming from.
That's fascinating. It's truly an international thing by definition and otherwise. Yeah. Do you ever get, feedback, say from, a hunter in our state that, it raises an eyebrow at the idea that, maybe some of that money is going to Canada, or it's not just about what we do here. We're having to worry about it. And if you do, how do you handle those conversations?
So we do try to just make that connection that, we have to, the prairie pothole region is the most important area for waterfowl that are coming to Mississippi. A part of our banding program that we take part in with wood ducks in the summer, we also, cooperate on banding operations during the summertime in areas in the prairie pothole region, so we can have that information. We can say, look, here's the portion of our band returns that are coming to Mississippi, birds that are harvested in Mississippi. Here's where they originated from, and that's the data source that we have to be able to make that point. It's not just Darren or my opinion on what we think is important, and trying to send money out of the state. We try to tie that. But we certainly understand that hunters want to, they want to see projects done here in Mississippi. And so we feel like we've been successful working with partners like Ducks Unlimited, Delta Wildlife, Delta Waterfowl, working on, getting outside funds to match our duck stamp dollars to work on wildlife management areas that are important to Mississippi hunters as well.
Yeah.
And ultimately, increasing nest success is going to have a greater benefit to the waterfowl population and creating wintering habitat.
Sure. And most anybody is going to be able to grasp that, and that when you're talking about, where they're coming from, I mean, they got to come from somewhere.
That's right.
So in regards to that, if they're, got those migratory birds, we were talking at one point about, dove hunting here, and I learned that here in Mississippi, we've got sort of our resident population of doves, and then you got the migratory that come through a little bit later, two different populations. Is there anything similar in the waterfowl arena that goes on here?
Yeah, definitely. So for Mississippi, we have a pretty strong residential wood duck population, and that's what oftentimes, that's what we focus on our banding projects. Right during the summertime, we do most of our banding on wood ducks. We don't band mallards or birds that are going to spend their summer somewhere else. We focus on those residential wood ducks.
I mean, if that's being done in that time of year too, it's pretty natural that that's what you're interacting with is that resident population of wood ducks who are already here.
That's right. Yeah, the best banding information that we have is what we call preseason banding. So marking birds that are raising their young in an area. So we focus on wood ducks and doves here. You get a representative sample of the population that's going into a hunting season, and so when those bands are harvested by hunters, we can get if they're adults or juveniles in the place where they originated from. The other thing that we have as far as waterfowl resident population is Canada geese, which are generally not favorably looked upon by Mississippi residents. Darren deals with a lot of the nuisance calls that we get, but they are still considered a migratory bird. They're protected by the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, and so we have hunting seasons, that are kind of designed to help control populations, and we encourage hunters to take advantage of that. Yeah,
and the nuisance factor. I'm not a golf course owner or anything like that, but I will say, it is kind of neat though. You go outside on the porch in the morning drinking coffee, and that V comes flying over your house, and they're honking. It's kind of like nature's alarm clock sometimes. But yeah, okay, they can be a nuisance, but they're necessary too. I mean, they're just as much a part of our natural environment and wildlife and resources as anything else, aren't they?
Yep, absolutely. And they're wonderful to look at and things like that. And that's wonderful until they become a problem, right? And that's landowners are fortunate that they have an out, right? So they have the ability to get a depredation permit, depending on the situation. We always encourage landowners to try to harass the geese to try to get them to leave or things like that. But there is an option for landowners to get a depredation permit for the lethal removal of the geese.
Yeah.
What can you do to the geese to get them off?
Holler at him, chase him. In terms of harassing them a little bit, what's the technique?
Yeah, so
to run 'em off?
harassing works to an extent. Typically, before they molt, while they can still fly, running them off. People a lot of times people will put things in their yard, mylar tape. Or just have a dog running around. I've seen people put coyote decoys in their in their yard on the edge of their pond, things like that. One thing just to deter the geese from coming up on your property is not cutting your grass all the way down to the water's edge, leaving a little bit of a buffer where they can't just walk straight up onto your yard, and things like that. And just kind of making it to where it's not really appealing for them to hang out and they feel unsafe. It's once they molt and they're rendered flightless. That's typically when they're a problem, and so that's when we get the majority of our calls.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, I wanted to ask you too, for hunters, duck hunters, public land hunters using those WMAs in those areas, tips and tricks. Anything I want to do, I can look up tips and tricks videos. But for the public land hunter, tips and tricks, things that you might say, hey, consider this. What would some of those be? What would you put on that list for them to know?
Well, I'll start, especially for people so waterfowl hunters like to travel a lot. So we'll get a fair number of people, especially late in January, maybe from a northern state where seasons are already closed earlier in the year. They'll want to travel south and hunt waterfowl. And a lot of times they don't know about like our draw system for wildlife management areas, putting in before the season opens in the early fall for a chance to have a spot on a wildlife management area where you don't have to get in line at 2 a.m. or fight over erase somebody to get to an area just to have a spot to hunt. And so we don't do those across all of our wildlife management areas because we want to still have the open access type hunting where if the season's open and I've got a day off, I can go hunting, then there's places that I can go and try to find a spot to hunt. And so just knowing the different setups and where those areas are to kind of increase your chances, putting in for those draws. If you don't get drawn, then, take the next step to look at, okay, what are some areas that I don't have to have that for to be able to try to get access.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, so that's one neat thing about the way that we manage our WMAs in the state. We kind of manage them in 3 different ways. So like Houston alluded to, we have the open WMA where you can just show up and go hunt, right? So that provides a lot of opportunity right there for people that are unfamiliar with the area or things like that. They can show up, just go hunt. We have our draw only, which you apply in October, and you apply for the WMA, and it's broken down. We have 5 different draws, and you can put your preferences as far as which dates that you would prefer to be drawn for, right? And if you're successfully drawn, you'll get an email and it tells you the date that you were drawn for and the unit that you got drawn for. So there's a little bit of confidence there where, all right, I know where I'm going, right? Mm-hmm. I don't have to go out and do a whole lot of scouting. And so, you have that, and we have those draws on some of what we would consider some of our better quality WMAs, right? Where we really want to try to manage hunting pressure. And so we have those, and then we also have some areas that are a draw with a standby option. So same thing, you go online and you apply for the draw, but the morning of the hunt, if someone does not show up for their draw, you can show up and put your name in on the list for a standby. And at 5 o'clock, if the drawn hunter does not show up, we will then host a drawing for the vacant spots.
Mm-hmm. The morning of.
The morning of, right. And we have several of those in the Delta that are staffed. And so just provides unique opportunity and different quality type WMAs as well.
You know, kind of in summary and looking at it, Houston, overall, you compare what you got going on this year versus recent years. You said it's a little bit better. Mm-hmm. Does that even get better then in comparison to recent years if this front does what we think it's going to do maybe over the next week or so here?
It certainly could. I always tell people that a wildlife biologist's favorite answer is it depends. So, you know, like Darren talked about earlier, there's going to be far less available water. And so there's going to be a lot of places that, you know, people are planning to hunt that are going to be, you know, just there. You know, may have to have a sledgehammer to break through the ice if you can even do that. So those are going to be challenges for sure. And then the other side of that is the birds that are here and potentially birds that are moving down into Mississippi that are not here yet are probably going to be pretty concentrated. And so we tell people, you know, you want to be safe, don't want to get, you know, encourage people to be out in unsafe conditions if that were to occur, but getting out and scouting maybe some non-traditional areas, some deeper water areas where birds may be concentrated can probably do you some good.
Yeah, that's neat. Houston Havens, Darren Hardesty, waterfowl guys at Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. Thank you all so much for what you do. Appreciate you being here.
Yep,
Thank you.
Enjoyed it. Hope y'all did too. Thanks for listening. We'll see you outdoors.